Hello, everybody. Welcome to Auto Racing Digest here on Athlon Sports. My name is Dylan Spalding. So happy to have you everyone here on a Friday as we record this, August 16th, 2024. And we're happy to have a very special guest with us here on the show as we get to interview today Miss Becca Monopoli from City Garage Motorsports, the driver of the number 85 Ford Fusion in the ARCA Menard Series. Becca, thank you so much for taking the time to talk. Really excited to get to unpack some things and talk a little bit about your career.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I want to kind of begin, obviously looking back at your career, a lot of wins, a lot of championships coming here in the state of Florida. Um, your dad obviously has a big racing reputation as well. How important has your dad's career in racing been to kind of you getting into racing as well?
Um, Very important. So he has built and worked on race cars for 45 plus years now. Started up north in Massachusetts and came down here and worked on a lot of the people's cars around here too. Um, if anybody needs anything at the track, our trailer is the first one to go to. That he has almost enough parts in the trailer to rebuild a race car. It seems that everybody, whatever someone needs, we have it. So just all of his knowledge and everything he's learned over the years has helped us. Granted, there are times where he will go and ask for help from others, and they are more than willing to help because he's always there to help them. So it just comes full circle for us. But he is the other half of the team. He is the spotter, the crew chief, the mechanic, the body hanger, and I am the wheel holder. And we do not swap roles very well at all. He has tried to drive, and it has not been that great. And I'm not a mechanic, so we make a good team.
how much of how much of your dad's input in regards to just learning about the car, growing up and such, how vital was that for you? Just kind of learning about racing, kind of getting into this sport and understanding the car more than just obviously going out on track and driving. How important was that to have somebody like that? Obviously, it being your dad as well. That goes a long way in kind of learning the ins and outs of the sport.
Yeah, it's very important. So when I was younger, he was helping Steve Dorr work on his car. So every weekend we were at the races with Steve and his team. So I would watch there and learn the racing from that. And then once we finally started racing our own, and he was working on my stuff. I think we make a really good team when you watch others, because you'll hear about the spotters yelling at the drivers or whatever, and we get along better. And if he wants to make an adjustment, he'll be like, well, what about doing this? And I'll ask him how it's going to do it. And he'll take my feedback into consideration and how we're going to make adjustments and make it better. And so we make a pretty good team. And so having that behind us helps a lot, because our team is me, my dad, and my mom. That's the whole team there. So it helps having him on board compared to some of the teams that have to hire out.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to go into kind of now your next step, obviously, not yet into ARCA, but I want to go into kind of again your Florida racing background and some of the racing that you've done across the state. You've gotten the race at multiple different tracks. You've won a lot of championships, a lot of water races, but getting into it is not easy. Obviously, you always have to have that that first step to get into racing, even at the local level. So, can you just talk a little bit about what that was? Just trying to get into the local level and then being able to make a name for yourself and people really recognizing you as a one of the better racers here in the state of Florida.
So my actual racing career started out with Legends when I was 21.
Yeah.
So I was, like I said the other day, I was telling you, I was behind the curve. Most people start when they're like 5 years old in go-karts on racetracks. I started with Mario Kart 64 in a backyard go-kart, driving around the backyard and up and down the street. But I didn't get on the actual race top until 21 of the Legend. And we did that for about 2.5 years before we got our truck. And then we did both of them at the same time for a bit. So I learned the ropes in the Legend and started growing there. I hope you can't hear the dog with the squeaky toy. Sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. It adds for the ambiance.
And then we did double duty with that. And hold on. Dog mom life.
It's all good.
So we did double duty with the truck and the Legend for a while until we sold those. And we've kept the truck since then. We've gone into super late models for maybe, was it 4 or 5 years? That just started getting too expensive, all the repairs every week. But it just grew from there. I mean, I started out base level like everybody else, hand out the window, wave you by during a
Yeah.
feature, and I was the lap car. It was fine. And then to be at the front, it took a while. It took a while to earn everybody's respect and to get to the confidence level where we're at.
Absolutely, absolutely. What have you been able to take away from racing locally that you have used in ARCA now? I know it's obviously a completely different atmosphere. The racing's different. You kind of mentioned about that when we talked on Wednesday a little bit, but what do you feel like you've been able to take away from your local racing background that you've been able to use kind of in ARCA? Because there are some tracks too that are very much short track styles, and I imagine that does help when you have that background racing here in the state of Florida.
So what I've noticed so far between local and ARCA is there's a little bit more respect in ARCA so far. Anyway,
Hmm.
I'm sure there's times where it's not, but it's not rubbing his racing as much as it is here. Um, so you're not beating and banging off of everybody. Um, so you learn there's a little bit more respect in it, but you got to have that back home too. You got to have that in the short track racing. So just having the short track experience going into IRP so far and some of the other ones we'll do next year, it's going to help with the driving style, but it's also going to be very different because the cars are much heavier. So I got to learn, it's almost like starting fresh. I got to learn a whole new car, new track, and how it handles compared to what I'm used to.
You mostly have been racing a lot of short tracks in your career. You did Daytona obviously for the test earlier this year, and then you also had a qualifying opportunity with Mixon Racing that was in conjunction with My Carmen Racing. But
Mhm.
what really interests you in about short track racing and about what it offers? I think it is very unique, and it's something that NASCAR has kind of been built off of. Is that short track racing, that local track racing? I think that's one of the cool things about NASCAR is that's kind of their basis of what they were built off of.
I think as a driver, it's more exciting for the short track racing because usually the whole time you're out there, you got something to look at, you got something to do, you got racing going on, door to door, side to side, everything is happening versus the larger tracks where it can get boring if you're spread out.
Mhm.
You might not be able to see the car in front of you or behind you, or they're just not catchable distance wise to race with. So with the short track racing, you have a lot more action happening for a longer amount of time than you would on larger tracks. Even New Smyrna will be there tomorrow. Even if you're leading for a while, it gets boring because you can't see the front stretch. There's nothing to look at in front of you. There's not a whole lot of action happening around you. So the short track, it's more fun as a driver, and even before I was racing, as a spectator, as a spectator, you don't have to pay for it or be in the wreck. So it's more fun watching them beat and bang off each other, and there's more lead changes and more passing. So the short track is definitely more exciting than a larger track.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to go back a little bit here. So you were part of the Alan Kulwicki Driver Development Program, which is a really big deal because Alan Kulwicki, obviously, everybody knows that name in NASCAR. It's synonymous with NASCAR. He's one of
Mm-hmm.
the legends of the sport. Just talk about again. You said you started at 21 to be able to grow at such a rapid pace, and then also to be able to, uh, you know, be able to also be a part of these programs and be able to kind of get these opportunities and such. I imagine that's got to be really, really exciting to see your growth. You probably have, looking back, you probably have learned a lot over these last handful of years. It's probably been like a whirlwind these last few years for you.
It was my early on in the career get trying to apply for all these programs, being the finalist of that. We didn't make it into that, but we also whereas for the went to the combine for Drive for Diversity. We were accepted into that one year, and the bad part about that is I didn't get accepted until I was 26, and that's the cutoff age of it. So I only had the one shot to do it. But that one in itself was a really cool experience. We flew up to Virginia for a couple days, and we tested at Langley. And that was the first time outside of Florida to drive on a different racetrack. Of course, it's nerve-wracking with 20 other people there that you're competing against to be better than them in a car you don't know, in a track you don't know. We did mock-up media days where we were in a news studio, cameras and everything. We did gym days. We did a lot of cool experience stuff, and just to be part of that, and some of the people that were in that, that was pretty neat. Like, we were at Daytona earlier this year, and Mambo was there, and I'm like, he's really familiar. Like, I'm like, Mom, I think he was at the diversity program with me. And I went back and looked at the stuff, and he was. I had met him then, and we hadn't talked a whole lot. I'm not sure if he'd remember me, but he was at the Drive for Diversity the same year I was there. Natalie Decker was there. Her cousin was there. There's a lot of the names that you know now was at the combine that year. So it was pretty cool experience.
Yeah, and how cool is that to like see them like in competing with them in ARCA? Like I believe Mamba was in that race at IRP, if I'm not mistaken, too, or he was at one of the races recently, if I'm not
I know
mistaken.
I had seen him there walking around as just an interviewer newscast.
Okay.
But I don't think he was driving then. If
Or maybe it
so,
was
I wasn't sure of
Toledo.
it.
It might have been Toledo last year. Maybe
Okay.
I might be because I remember rewatching something and I think he might have been in that race. I can't remember, but it's got to be pretty cool though to like see people that you're kind of growing, like you're competing with, and you're kind of growing into your career. It's probably awesome to like see them as well, kind of at the, you guys are both all at the same level and competing against each other. It's got to be pretty cool and also familiar as well. It's got to be nice to know like how they drive and how they perform as well. It's got to be cool.
Yeah, it's neat seeing all the different aspects of racing world that they've branched out to. It's not just as a driver. You can be a newscaster. You can be race
Yeah.
personality. And so there's whole different careers that's open for us.
You've raced in so many different cars over your career and in your short career, but your extensive career at that. What is that transition like from going into like different cars, like from going to a Legends car, then transitioning into like a pro truck to then going into obviously the ARCA Menard series? There's a lot of different things. Is there kind of are there things you're able to take away from some of the other experiences that you have, or is it kind of you're retraining yourself? How does that like, move into different vehicles look like for you in regards to just kind of preparing for each race and whatever you're driving?
Transitions were pretty easy. I was always told that if you can drive a Legend, you can drive anything. And because I didn't have anything to compare Legends to, that's just what
Hmm.
I learned on. They weren't hard to me per se. It was just that's what it was. So starting out with what I guess people consider one of the hardest race cars, going to something like a truck that's bigger body, more stable, that was easy. And then the Super just had to balance the more power to it than the truck had. Um, the toughest part sometimes is having two trucks now that they'll drive differently. The steering ratio
Hmm.
is different. The power is in a different spot. The shifters are different. So it's remembering what vehicle I'm in at that moment. Like, all right, what am I? Where's the button? Where am I shifting? Where's my lever? Like,
Yeah.
that's the hardest part of it. But there were times when I was racing both the truck and the Super on the same day where if I took the Super out first, the truck would be faster than I would if I didn't have the Super there. So my driving style would change a little, but I couldn't tell you what I was doing different, but I would be faster in it.
I love it. I love it. I want to look back at earlier this year. So you got your first test at Daytona. Fast Track Racing gave you the opportunity to do a test at Daytona International Speedway. I believe it was in January, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And just getting a chance to be in ARCA, how special was that to be able to test at arguably one of the most historical tracks in NASCAR? But it's also a track that it can be difficult at times, especially I know there's parts of the track. Like I know I had listened to a podcast where David Reagan was saying that in the tri-oval, the cars get really light in the tri-oval, so it gets hard to kind of control the car a little bit. Just what was it like learning Daytona and super speedway racing? Obviously, it's a different atmosphere when you're doing a test compared to when you're actually racing there or when you're even qualifying there.
Mhm.
So just talk about getting that chance, getting that experience, how it came about, and just talk about like what you were able to take away from that.
So it was like January 2nd or 4th. I got a call from Mike Clayton, friend of ours from the Florida Sheriff Youth Ranches, and he used to be part owner with Keller, Clayton, and Harmon when they had a
Yes.
team. And they parted ways, but he was still good, but friends with both of them, and called, let me know, like, hey, they might be reaching out to you. They're wanting to start an ARCA team. I kept telling them about you, and I'm like, okay, well, as I was on the phone with him, someone's beeping in. I don't know who it is. I call him back, and it's Harmon's team. And they're like, well, we're going to be testing next week at Daytona. Want to see if you're interested? And I'm like, well, yeah, of course I am. But I'm like, of course, let me ask my dad. I know nothing's free. Let's work this out and call dad.
Yeah.
And he's like, heck yeah, let's do it. Like, even if this doesn't turn into anything, it's Daytona. Like, we're
Yeah.
not going to turn this down. So we go to Daytona with them, and we're all just super excited about it. I mean, it's Daytona.
Yeah.
And I've lived in Daytona for college, so that's like my second home out there. I love it. So Daytona is my home track on NASCAR level, but it was really cool. The banking, just to go, first of all, I mean, as a racer, I should have known full throttle all the way around, but nobody told me going out there. So I kind of lifted a little. I'm like, no, I think I'm good, and I just floored it. But when you go in the banking, I was expecting to, like, all right, I hope my neck's strong enough. Like, when you turn in your street car and you lean in the seat some, you don't lean side to side. You go straight down in the seat. So you just kind of compress. You feel like your guts move, like when you're on a roller coaster. My eyes could feel it bulge a little. Like, it was really neat in the turns. And you barely see any of the sky. All you see is asphalt. You're just looking at like the top corner of your windshield. It's so different than local track. And the straightaways are very boring. You're just hold it straight, just wait and wait and wait, and then you get to turn 3, and then you do it again. And it's kind of strange when you're coming out of 4. For me, it was like, oh, the turn stopped, like, because you couldn't really see it coming. It just all of a sudden it stopped. And then you felt it a little, the banking a little in the tri-oval part, but the turns are the neatest part of it. And I came in after a few laps. They're like, well, why'd you come in? I'm like, I didn't know what else to do. Nobody was talking to me. Like, all right, when you're out there by yourself, it's like New Smyrna. You get kind of bored. You need something to
Yeah.
look at. But later on, they got me out there, and I got to draft a little. And first time ever drafting, and it was one car, but you could feel, it's not, you didn't quite feel a pull. I didn't anyway, but I was catching them to the point where I needed to lift a little. And so I got as close as I felt comfortable. I picked up another 10 miles an hour with it. You could feel the air pressure change in the cabin. Your ears kind of woo, woo, woo. The windshield wobbled a little, but it was pretty neat in a draft. I can't imagine what it's going to be like with more cars when we go back in February, in front, behind, and beside. It's going to be different, but I'm looking forward to it.
I hope you're not I hope you're not preparing me out. So Tuesday I'm going to be at Daytona doing a pace car lap with Frank Keller, and I hope you're not preparing me for what to expect, but it kind of sounds intriguing to say the least. So I don't know if they're going to go that fast, but it will definitely be unique to say the least.
So before the race, or on practice, they usually take you around for like the officials to tell you
Yeah.
certain spots on the track to look for.
Mhm.
And we were doing about 140. Yeah, I
Okay.
think it was like 140, maybe. No, we were going pretty fast. I think it was over 100, no, 110. I think it was 110. You don't feel it at all. You're not going to even notice. So make sure you ask him how fast you're going, because you're going to be surprised.
I,
It's not
I,
going to feel like it.
I definitely will. It's going to be pretty surreal to say the least. Yeah, what is just being in the car and just seeing like the grandstands, right? Just seeing the size of the track. I mean, that first lap, I can imagine you're just kind of in awe because obviously you kind of mentioned like that is technically speaking your home track. It's your second home, if you will. I can just imagine, especially with that being your first time, I can imagine you'd be in awe just seeing the track as a racer. That's got to be a
Mhm.
pretty cool thing to be able to say, like, I'm here racing on track at Daytona. That first lap must have been like surreal.
I was very focused. I'm like, okay, just look at the line, look at your spots, and go. Um, the more surreal and awe moment is because I've been to Daytona many times,
Mhm.
both on the fan side and in the pits and on pit road. But to go there knowing that you're the driver this time, you're not there just to watch, and to stand on pit road, look up at the stands, and see it from that perspective and that mindset, that's where the awe is. Like, I'm going to be racing here. This is
Yeah.
awesome. Like when we went there to practice, it was a rainy day and it was delayed, so they actually had the lights on. And some people got to practice under the lights at Daytona. We didn't get to. We had to wait till the next day, but it was just like, okay, we're doing this.
Yeah.
It's time, because of course everybody stands there like, man, I wish I could race here one day, and they look around, but it's like, this is my chance. I'm getting to do it now.
When you got to work with Mixon Racing with Mike Harmon Racing for that venture, what were you able to kind of take away from them? Because I actually got a chance to interview Mike kind of right before when this happened. So when I saw the announcement, I was really excited about it. I was like, "Oh, this is awesome! Becca's going to get a chance to drive in this car, and I hope she does really good." But like, what were you like able to like take away learning from them, it being that it was your first time with in the ARCA series, like at Daytona, at least for a race weekend, I should say, like with ARCA. So like
Mhm.
what were you able to kind of learn from them and the group and such that kind of has prepared you now for what you're doing with City Garage Motorsports?
Well, it was a good experience. Of course, his first big league really experience for any of us, so it was
Yeah.
like getting introduced to people that you need to know, getting through all the tech and the stations, what to do, where to go, what to expect of the car. This is what it's going to feel like. This is where you need to drive for your line. um, if you need to drag the brake, you need all these different little tips and stuff that he would give me. We would talk about, look at the car, just stuff like that that I learned with them.
And it must have been nice too with Mike being a former racer. It must have been nice to kind of get that former that racer's kind of knowledge as well with him.
Yeah, the southern twang along with
Yes,
it.
yes, he does have a definite southern twang for sure.
Yeah.
Coming out of Daytona, coming out of that weekend, you unfortunately were not able to qualify for the race. But was that kind of coming out of it? Were you kind of just more hungry? Like, what was kind of that mindset coming out of it? Like, oh, I want to be back. Like, I'm definitely going to be back. Just keep grinding and keep pushing. Like, how was that kind of mindset coming out of it? Because I imagine it's got to be disappointing. You want to be able to race in the event, but I imagine it just makes you want to continue to grow and get better and get ready for whatever that next opportunity comes.
It was very heartbreaking because we were doing group qualifying, and the
Mhm.
only way that you were going to qualify fast enough was in the group with the draft. And soon I was in the first group, and as soon as we started to go out, the car stalled, and I was the last person in the pack. And once I could barely reach the lever was like here, and I'm like stretching
Uh,
for it. Um, and once I get it going, they were just too far ahead, and there was no way of catching them. So we didn't make it, and it was just as soon as I got on the track, I was just mentally I fell apart. I'm like, I already knew we were done. Just so came in, went to the trailer, went in the corner, and had my moment. But after that, it was like we knew we were gonna do it again. We just didn't know when. We had talked about maybe Talladega, but that's when City Garage came around, and they were actually at Daytona that day. They were there to learn from the ARCA officials and what to do
yeah.
to start a team and everything. And then they reached out to me and asked if I'd be interested in being their driver because they'd seen we were from Lakeland. They had talked to me before the Daytona race, so that's how that all that came about. So I guess everything happens for a reason, and this was one of those reasons.
Yeah, and it's cool because they're from Lakeland, you're from Lakeland, and to be able to represent a team that's in a in your hometown, but also it's right there. You guys are both getting a chance to race on a national stage. I mean, that's a pretty cool thing, and the way you guys like connected was interesting. Jason told me that he went on Facebook and actually messaged you, and then you guys met at
Yeah.
a coffee shop. That you don't see that very often in NASCAR, but can you just tell me like how you got connected, how the ball got rolling a little bit? Like it's cool that you got this opportunity.
So he reached out when we were looking and advertising on Facebook for sponsors for Daytona
Mhm.
and saying that they might be interested. So me and my dad went and met him at a coffee shop downtown, And we talked for an hour or so, told them everything we learned. Like, we'll come talk to them. Like, we don't know a whole lot in ARCA. We're new in this, but we'll come tell you. And we told them everything, and they were really interested. But that's when they reached out to ARCA, and they went up and saw the shops and stuff. And then they went to Daytona. And then after the races, I don't remember if it was a week or two after, he emailed me again. And he's just like, Stuart, the owner, and I would like to meet with you and your family again at the same place. And we have a proposition for you, something that could benefit both of us. And I'm like, okay, sure. And of course, me and my parents are talking between each other, and we're like, what do you think it is? I don't know what it is. I mean, only thing I can think of, do they want to drive? I don't know. Are they really starting to seem like we, of course, had the whole debate back and forth. And that's what it was. That was the first time we got to meet Stuart. And, they asked if I'd be interested and if Dad would want to be the crew chief, and we're like, yeah, let's do it. And then they got a car from Willie Mullins. Dad's been working on it. They drove up to Virginia all together and picked it up, and it's just been going from there.
How cool is it, though, to see the commitment of excellence that Stewart wants out of this team? Because he doesn't want this to be a start and park team. He wants you to be competitive. He wants the team to be competitive. I mean, you're seeing, I was at the shop last week. He's putting stickers on the car and helping out with the crew. Like, you just don't see that a lot with owners. So how nice is it to have like an owner that is committed in this, that is a big race fan as well, and really wants to see the best, not only from you, but also from the team and from the car?
It's great. I mean, everybody's really close on the team. It's all like family there. And I don't know if you met Logan and Ray. They're part
I
of the
did.
crew too. Unfortunately, their flights were canceled on the way up to IRP, so they didn't make it up there. But everybody is so close there. Like last night, Jason sent me a smart car. He's like, "Oh, this is my dream car." I'm like, "What are you gonna do? Drive in the trunk?" Like, we're all just really close, and it's a nice team, and it's good to be able to just show up at the shop and go see everybody and hang out whenever without it feeling stiff and, I don't know, commercial like.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, going into the shop and seeing it is your local team, and that's what I think
Yeah.
is awesome about it. And like, to be able to say you represent Lakeland for a Lakeland-based team in NASCAR, like, that's also got to be cool, because then people start to figure out like, oh, who's this Lakeland team coming about? So how cool is it to be able to represent your hometown, and in a way where you're also going with a hometown team, and you're kind of, it's coming, it's, as you kind of mentioned earlier, it's full circle for you.
It is, and it's very neat to be able that it's local. We don't have to go up to Charlotte
Yeah.
for anything, or Mooresville. We have our downfalls with it being that the racing center is up north, so sometimes we'll have to bring the car up there to get parts there, and it's hard to source stuff locally at times, but it's nice to have it down here and be able to represent the Florida companies and people that back us down here, and have our like friends and family that are local be able to go to the shop if they want, or go to the watch parties at Swan
Yeah.
Brewing, or just come see us out downtown whenever we have events. So that part is really cool.
How crazy is that? You guys have a watch party in your
I
first race.
know.
When you
I
what
know.
was your reaction when you found out about that?
I'm like, this is really cool. I'm like, I kind of wish I could be there, but I mean,
That's exactly what Jason and Stewart said. They're like, we wish we could be there for it. We were so excited.
yeah.
That's awesome. That is so cool. What is it like to be able to represent women at this level in motorsports? Because you really are. I mean, you look at the ARCA Menard series, right? You have Tony, and even Natalie has came through the series. Haley Deegan is another good example. You have other racers in other disciplines who are making names for themselves and really showcasing women in motorsports. And that not only are you great women's drivers, you are great racers and great race car drivers as well. So what is it like to be able to kind of be a part of that contingency, that group, and be able to represent women in motorsports, not only in the state of Florida, but just nationally as well?
I think I can speak for all of us to say that we all want to be the first. We want to be the first to get that win. We want to be the first to move up, to be more well known without having the negativity behind it, because unfortunately a lot of the females have so much negative feedback when it's not deserved. I mean, things happen on the track, and just because you're a female, that's not the reason why it happened. Look at all
Absolutely.
the men that crashed. There's more. The percentage is higher that way. It just happens to be, oh, it's a girl. Well, that doesn't have anything to do with her driving. So it's an advantage on some levels, but a disadvantage to the people that aren't open to it. That there's bias out there, but that doesn't stop us. We're still going to do it. We still want to be the first. We want to be treated the same. Their guys aren't going to move over and tell us, "Oh, you go ahead because you're a girl." No, we still have to fight for it, but we all just want to be the first female to do something. But yeah, we just got to keep going.
I love it. I love it. They gotta have that attitude, especially. Absolutely. And it's cool too, like NASCAR is really even supporting it as well. You're seeing NASCAR supporting diversity and trying to make it a much more inclusive sport. I mean, that's gotta be good to see NASCAR really trying to get involved and trying to get more people into this sport because it's a growing sport. You're seeing teams in the Cup Series. You're seeing F1 drivers. You're seeing Juan Pablo Montoya coming back and racing, which I could not believe. But like, it is cool to see like you're seeing more diversity in the sport now more than ever, and I think that's a testament to NASCAR and what they're doing. So it's got to be cool to be able to be a part of this era of NASCAR and what we're going into, where you can get into the sport more than you can or have in the past.
It is. And the tough part is the funding and the backing behind the
Yeah,
drivers, because there's, I'm sure, a lot more girls out there that want to do it, but they don't have the resources to get there. And that's the tough part, because it's not all on talent anymore. It's
yeah,
what sponsor can you get to help you, which that's the unfortunate part of it all. You go to your local tracks and there's a lot of young girls that are racing, and we named our car Sadie.
yeah.
We had a contest, we named it Sadie after this little girl that races, and she she's a little badass, like she's doing so good. And I told her one day, I'm like, "You're going to take my ride." And her mom's like, "Well, that's the goal." So there's these girls out there that have the capabilities of it, but they just got to get there, and they need that support and that backing. So we just need more people that support us to help
Absolutely.
that happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Sadie. I was gonna mention about her actually. Yeah, what is it how cool is it to see like a little girl like Sadie just fall in love with you and basically like see you as like a role model in her racing career? Like that's awesome. That is so cool. And that I feel like is like what trajectory we need to be going in regards to seeing this growth and again in just motorsports and that's it's so cool. It's so awesome.
I it's it's so flattering. I love it. We were at Auburndale one night and we hadn't done that well, I don't think, but she came over, she was parked a couple stalls over, and I hadn't really noticed her before. And she came over and congratulated me. I'm like, "Well, thank you." And I went over to see her car. I'm like, "How'd you do?" And she was telling us, and we're like, "Well, what's your name?" She's like, "Sadie." And me and mom looked at each other like, "We like that name. That's cute." And then this was before any of the ARCA stuff. And then we had the contest, and then we're like, oh, because we wanted our own submission too. We're like, we're
Yeah.
gonna submit Sadie. This is gonna be our vote. And then like we told the guys, and they're like, okay, we're gonna do Sadie. They submitted the name Sadie. We're like, okay. And then when we went and tested at New Smyrna before the race, we invited Sadie and her family to come out there. So her little brother and her mom came out to New Smyrna, and she got in the car, steering wheel, like she was so excited. Like her smile was so big, and she just loved to being around it and in the car and hanging out and all. So they've been a good part of this, and we want to try and keep them involved with it.
What was her reaction when she found out the car was named Sadie? That must have been
She
like made her
Yeah,
day.
she was excited, and she put the name on herself. So I brought the
That's
sticker for her, and
awesome.
she put it on the car herself.
That is so cool. That's so cool. Hey, and that's what you gotta love about racing, right? It's just like having those wholesome moments and being able to get people in the sport. I mean, that's really why a lot of people do it is they want to be able to hopefully be able to get more people into racing and be able to draw more fans and more people hopefully one day wanting to get into the car and actually race. I mean, that's got to be so fulfilling when you see stuff like that, when you see people who are getting into motorsports because of you or because of other drivers. That's got to be a pretty fulfilling thing when as a race car driver.
And I always tell people that haven't been to the races before, racing's not their thing, that it's more fun when you know someone that's driving, because then you have someone to cheer for.
Yeah,
Otherwise, you're just watching cars go around and you don't know which one to pick out besides, okay, that one's pretty, I want that one to win. So the people around work and the dealers, that I'll tell them that they don't know about racing, I'm like, well, come on, you can come cheer.
yeah,
And I've got them to go out there before, and then they'll keep asking about it or go back again. So you always got to just talk to the fans and talk to people and tell people that it's out there, because people don't even know that the racetrack's 2 miles from them. It's just building that base.
absolutely. Going back a few weeks ago, IRP first race for the team, debut race as a team. Obviously, um, you know, very exciting for you guys getting off the ground and such. It didn't go the way you guys hoped, but just talk a little bit about being able to be with the team for the first time at a race weekend, getting to compete with them, obviously representing Lakeland, Florida very proudly in the race. But just talk a little bit about that race at IRP, what you were able to kind of take away from it. I know obviously the wreck happened at lap 128, so obviously unfortunate that what happened. But you know, coming out of that first race, how do you feel with the team overall and just comfortability and such?
Well, it was a very event-filled weekend.
Yeah,
That was the weekend of the Microsoft crash with the flights. So to get up there was a struggle. We had to get off of a flight that we were on in Tampa, get onto another one. We changed it to go to Nashville. We rented a car from Nashville, drove there up to Indianapolis. We didn't get to our hotel till 5 the next morning, and we had to be at the track at 8. So there wasn't a whole lot of sleep for us. Half the team didn't make it up. Their flights were canceled. So by the time we got to the track, I would have expected to be exhausted, but I think the adrenaline, it was very, it was a learning day for all of us. I don't like being the most experienced, being the driver on the team. So it was different. Everybody was learning what to do, where to go, when to be there. And you could see the nerves on some people, and I did pretty good up until staging. And then I was like started to shake a little, like, okay, just gotta calm down. But it gets stressful when the moment comes to get in the car. So everybody starts rushing, but we all communicated well, we did well, up until my moment of spinning, I'll say, on the track. Um, but after that, we regrouped, got back home, more cluster of flights,
yeah.
um, and just we had a meeting after, talked about how we thought it went, what we can improve, what needs to be done next time, and just had a recap about what went on. But just the day at the track, it was good. It. I figured after the first one, everything's gonna go more smooth. Now we got all the bugs out, I hope. All the jitters, we know what to expect now, and it'll be better next time in October.
Yeah, I remember when Jason, when I was talking to him last week, he had said that one thing that he had really enjoyed, and I know he had mentioned, was you and just the communication you're having, where you're giving that feedback and you are kind of talking about what you're feeling in the car and how the car is handling and such. Um, you know, like how important is that communication, especially in this weekend as well, with the team learning and everybody's just kind of all in the same playing field and stuff? Like, kind of just talk a little bit about how important that was for this first race, and for the team, and for you guys heading into this now second race coming up at Toledo. How important was getting that communication, getting that feedback, understanding what's happening with the car? That's very crucial, I imagine.
Oh, very, because if they don't trust me to give them the right feedback, then they're going to make an adjustment that doesn't need to be done. Or if I
Yeah.
can't give them the right feedback, we can't get the car to handle right, to last the whole race for us. So I have to be able to trust them to make the adjustments needed. And to do that, I have to give the best feedback that I'm capable of, like where it's feeling, how it's feeling, at exactly what points, so that they know exactly what to change and how much to change it. And we had hired some help with the crew, and that helped as well, getting their feedback of what should be done to adjust certain things. Might be things that we don't typically adjust with our trucks because the vehicles are much different. The track is
Yeah,
different. So it's a learning process for my dad and our crew. But because I already have that relationship with my dad, he knows what I'm trying to tell him with my feedback. He knows what I mean, and I know what to tell him to get the job done. So it
absolutely.
is very, you got to know what to tell your team to get the right adjustments out of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just also competing against that competition, because this was again your first official ARCA race in the ARCA Menard series, to go up against some really really talented competition. You have drivers such as Connor Zilic and Tony Breidinger was in that race as well. A lot of really really great drivers. Was there anything you were kind of able to just take away from being around some of those drivers, competing against them? I can imagine there's probably some things you pick up on. What lines are they taking?
Right.
I mean, there's probably a lot of things you're able to take away from that and being actually in the race against them.
The lines was the biggest thing because obviously, what trying to learn a new track, the lines are going to be
Yeah.
different. And what was very strange was there wasn't one line. Like, depending on how people's cars were, like Tony's line was on the bottom the whole way. Like she would go in on the bottom, stay in the middle on the bottom, and then come off on the bottom. Whereas I would go in and lane up, let it drift up to the wall, and then come back down like a lot of other people were. So trying to find the right car to follow to learn the line is tricky, and that's where you
Yeah.
just got to see what your car wants to do, but you also have to learn from the ones around you. And it's hard when you're in the car to tell when they're lifting and when they're getting back on it. So while the trucks were out there qualifying and practicing, I went over and turn one and watched them so you could see when they'd lift, when they'd get back on the gas, and that helped too. And that showed that they're not sticking with one line either. They were all over the turn, and it just depends on how you're set up. Every driver drives different, so there's no universal setup. Just like here, we all drive different, so uh, your setup might not work for my driving style. So it's just finding that right balance and getting behind the right car.
Yeah, what was that like also having the truck series as well? Because that must have also been a good thing you mentioned as well, just having the truck series there. Obviously, it's the kind of that next level above ARCA. So that must have
Hmm.
also been cool as well to kind of get I don't know if you got any feedback or advice or anything at all, or you talked to any of those drivers at all. But it must have also been nice to just see that as well.
I'm friends with one of someone that was working on one of the crews there, so I
Okay,
was
cool.
talking to him. He was telling me like that they where they were lifting and letting it drift up like that too. But it was good to watch. It's hard at a short track like
Yeah.
IRP because there's no garages in the pits,
Hmm.
so it had all of the trucks, pit boxes, and all of them in the pits as well with us. So it was a little full and stuffed in there. But it's fun when you have another class there to watch too. You get to be a fan for a little while.
Absolutely, absolutely. Going into Toledo, that's the next race coming up for you guys. You got originally the plans were Bristol. I know Jason was talking a little bit about it. It just felt like it wasn't the best fit maybe for you guys in your first year. But how do you feel like Toledo will maybe cater to you guys a little bit more? What are you mostly looking excited about the track? I mean, I know you haven't been there, but I imagine you're probably pretty excited at least to get back out on track, and you definitely have a lot that you could take away now heading into race two. I feel like you guys probably are maybe better prepared, if you will, for the second race.
Yeah, I feel like no matter where we go for the first year, I'll be at a bit of a disadvantage being the first time going
Hmm.
to that track. That's why we got the iRacing to try and help with that. Unfortunately, Toledo is not one of the tracks on
Yeah,
there. So um, I just wish it wasn't October. I wish it was sooner. I don't like waiting all these months in between. But no, I think we're gonna do much better. We have a little bit more under our belts now, and I am going to talk to more drivers and see what their advice is. If the car starts coming out from under them, or am I just letting it spin? Is it possible to save it? I'm used to saving it. I can save it here. Maybe I can't save it there. So I just need to get more feedback from other drivers and get their advice. And hopefully they're open to helping and um, seeing what they can do.
absolutely, absolutely. Now I have a bit of a side question here for you.
Okay.
Um, So obviously we saw what happened at the Cup Series race in Richmond with Austin Dillon and the whole incident that happened there. We know ARCA can get a bit aggressive too. What are your thoughts on that kind of racing, if you will, like where it it was a little touchy there, if you will. But what are your kind of thoughts on that? Because we can see that in ARCA sometimes. ARCA can get a little bit feisty. We saw that at Daytona, where it felt like it was a demolition derby for some of the incidents that happened. But can you just discuss on what your thoughts are on that and that kind of racing style?
I have been in that leader position before and have that done to me. Those are the nights I get out of my truck screaming at the person that did it. So I am not a fan of those things. I don't really like the saying "rubbin's racing,"
Yeah,
um, because people look at that as it's okay to door you. That's not the rubbing. Rubbing is when you're next to someone, you happen to slide a little, you touch, it doesn't affect either of you. That's rubbing. But this flat out driving into someone, using them to slow you down, jacking them up to move them, I don't like that. That's not racing. If you're that good, wait for that opportunity, get your nose in there and do it clean. I don't like this jacking up, moving, wrecking to win kind of thing.
yeah, and
So
I don't
no,
know.
that
I don't know
wasn't a
if
good
you.
move.
I don't know if you saw what happened with Logano post race where he was coming down pit road. He actually almost hit Dylan's family. How do you keep your composure? Like how? I mean, you have to keep your composure in that instance, right? Like how do you kind of close out the emotions as a driver? Because that can be challenging. It can be. Emotions can tempers will flare, but how do you keep your composure in those instances?
It it's hard. It's really hard when you're still in there and the moment just happened. Um, but you also can't use your car as a weapon to pedestrians.
Yeah,
I have retaliated against people on the track in the car. I will not go after someone standing on the ground. I might yell at them through my window or I
yeah.
might rev the motor next to them, but you don't go after someone that's standing when you're in car and just no.
And that had nothing to do with the race either. Yeah, it was very much it was a very interesting mood. I wanted to get your take on that because it really was a topic of interest this week, and I think a lot of people were kind of discussing like what NASCAR should do in that situation, and we've seen that in ARCA, we've seen that in other series, and I think having a driver like yourself where you've been in races before and you understand like what the racing style is and stuff, and I think you get honestly put you touched it right on the money. I mean, that's yeah. I mean, it's definitely Rubbin's racing, but not that type of racing. So I completely agree.
Yeah, I mean, we all get heated in the moment, and then
Yeah,
it takes a little bit of time, calm down, then you're cool, you go back and look. Sometimes it's even
yeah,
your fault after you're heated and you don't realize it in the moment. But even in that video of him going down pit road, it looks like he swerves a couple times before he even gets to them. And I mean, I get the frustration, but drop your window net and yell, or if that's
yeah.
what you feel like you have to do, but don't, no, you don't drive through a crowd.
No, I agree. I agree completely. Well, let me ask you this, Becca. I'll close out on this, and I really appreciate you jumping on again. It's been great to get to talk to you. I'm really excited for what's to come with you and City Garage here coming up. Obviously, you got some exciting stuff here in the future with the team, obviously with the race, and then I know you guys are. I've heard you guys may be testing here soon as well at New
Yeah.
Smyrna, which is really exciting. Get some more data about the car, but what is next for you? Is are there other racing disciplines that you may want to try out? Like, do you want to try maybe sports car racing? Would you ever consider? Like, I mean, what is next for you? I don't know. I mean, what would you want to do? What are some things that you would want to maybe try to aspire to do outside of maybe NASCAR? Or obviously, you still got ARCA and stuff as well.
Um, I would I'd love to move up.
Okay.
Um, I would love to get into a position where you get paid to race.
Hmm.
But outside of regular NASCAR and racing, I think it would be awesome to try a monster truck. That that's one of the things I'd like to do. Try a monster truck.
That is awesome. That's hilarious because they literally just came from Monster Jam.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, from Tampa. So that is hilarious. Now they have what is it? The team here, I believe it's in Florida. Oh geez. Kraken, I think it is. It's like the squid looking truck thing. I'll show you a picture of it or something. I think they're based out of Florida. They do a lot at the Freedom Factory, so maybe we could get you behind the wheel of one of those. Or
That'd be
they used
awesome.
to have the team in Bushnell, Gunslinger, who used to
Oh,
the
yeah.
guy Scott Hartstock. He used to drive up there, and maybe I don't know. I saw they were actually selling the truck too. Like the wife
That'd
was
be
selling
cool.
the truck. So Becca, maybe we'll see you buy a Monster Jam truck here in the future. That would be
That'd be
awesome. That would
nice.
be pretty cool. It is crazy. Like I don't know if you see in the Monster Jam trucks, they'll have the drivers will pull off the wheel when they're doing the stop wheelies. Would that be something you would do? Pull off the actual wheel off the actual truck?
I don't know about that.
I'm like, I don't know how they do it. It's like the most daring thing. I don't know if I could do that, but
Yeah, we
Becca,
went to Monster Jam maybe 10 years ago now, and it's just awesome. It's cool what
it
they
is
can
cool.
do with those things, and the the roar of their motors is even bigger than ours. It's so neat.
It's ironic too because there's actually a Monster Jam driver who races in NASCAR from time to time. Camden Murphy races in
Oh, cool.
NASCAR. So it's there's some tie-ins there. So hey, you want to be you would definitely want to be the first to do the crossover. So but Becca, I want to say again, thank you so much for taking some time to talk. I really do appreciate it. Really excited for what's to come. Where can people find you? Where can people follow you? City Garage Motorsports as well. Where can people find more about you and the team?
So on Facebook, you can find me on Becca Monopoly Racing and the team for City Garage Motorsports. They have a page. And on Twitter, it is BeckBeck59X and CG Motorsports FL. You can follow us on Instagram.
Awesome. All right. Well, Becca, thanks again so much. Well, hopefully we'll talk to you down the road, maybe at after your race at Toledo, and maybe talking a little bit about that. But again, thank you so much. Really, really do appreciate it, and good luck, obviously, with everything else going on, and good luck this weekend in New Smyrna.
Thank you. Thank you again for having me. It was fun.
Absolutely.